Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Inside the Orange podcast, the podcast all about understanding the people around us. Now, first of all, once again, I just want to say a massive thank you for listening and enjoying the season so far, and for all the feedback that I've received. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you. So, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking to the Motivational Firewood Guy, Steve Gamlin. Now, Steve emailed me following one of my episodes from last season, and we got chatting, and he has been such a great person to kind of meet and continues to inspire me. And this episode today, we had a conversation that's perhaps shown us both a different way of looking at things in life. So, let's get into the episode. So my guest today is the amazing Steve Gamlin. He's the Motivational Firewood Guy, a fantastic motivational speaker who reached out to me recently and said he'd like to come and share his story. So he's here today. So Steve, welcome to the Inside the Orange podcast. How's your day been so far?
So far, so good. We are trucking on through. It's a little chilly here. So in between shows, I've got the little heater going in the recording studio and I got 2 pairs of socks on, but otherwise from the waist up, I'm in paradise right now. It's a good day.
That's great to know. Cheers, Steve. So we kind of got in touch via. You reached out to me through an episode of the podcast. You said it was the Why I Love Simon Sinek episode from season 1. I just want to know kind of what resonated that with you, and what for you to get in touch with the podcast. Why was that so important to you?
I absolutely love the question of why people do things. What is their reason behind doing things? Because if you can figure out your purpose, it's like gas in the tank. If you know your why, you're going to be more laser focused, where anything can fall across your path. And if you know your why, you're going to go over it, under it, around it. But if you just I'd kind of like to have this in my life. Oh, that's inconvenient. Okay, let me go do something else. If you're really connected to that why, and I absolutely love Simon Sinek. And as soon as I saw that you were talking about one of his concepts, I listened and I go, I really would love to have a conversation with this guy. And here we are.
Oh, Steve, that's really good to hear. And again, that's something I've said in the past. I love people who just want to reach out, and if it does resonate with them, if it's something that if they disagree with, I don't mind. It's just nice to have sometimes that conversation. Again, it's set us up to be here now. So you're known as the Motivational Firewood Guy. That's correct, isn't it? And one of your things you talk about is visualization. Okay, that's what you talk about. And so I want to know how you came about to do these things. How did you get into motivational speaking, and why is visualization so important? Can you give us a bit of information about it?
I sure can. I'll give you the condensed version of how I became a speaker. And so many people go, it just felt like a calling. It over time it developed. In August 2003, on a Friday afternoon, I've got it pinned right to the day. It was shortly after I blew up my radio career. I was on the radio for 10 years. I was going through a divorce, and I was age 35, and I was $62,000 in debt. So I blew my life all into a million pieces. And on a very muggy August afternoon in 2003, I had $3 in my pocket, and I went and hit a bucket of golf balls. Well, I'm a dangerous golfer, so I went way to the far tee box underneath the power lines, and a thunderstorm came through, and everybody but me ran away from the storm. So I sat there for an hour hitting golf balls in the pouring rain, in a thunderstorm, under power lines, barefoot in the wet grass, and at one point even just held the club up and said, "Go ahead, I dare you. My life blows." Just Go ahead, I don't care. So I hit all my golf balls and the 2 buckets of 2 gentlemen who had run from the storm and went home. And at the end of an hour, I couldn't even lift my arms. And when I got to my car to open the door, the sun came out and the rain stopped. And I just started laughing at how funny that was. And a couple of days later, I was telling that story to a brand new life coach I just started working with. And he says, "So how was your week?" I said, "Put your pen down and listen to this." And I just tried to make it really funny what had happened. And he said, I've got two questions for you. Are you this open and honest about your life with everyone? I said, yeah, usually in a self-deprecating way, but sure. You ever thought of being a motivational speaker or a stand-up comedian? And I just paused and I said, yes, on both, but I have no idea how to pursue either one. And he said, I've got a brochure on my desk from the mail today for a local community college that has an intro to stand-up comedy class starting in 3 weeks. Do you want to go? And I was there. And he said, and as far as speaking, you ever heard of Toastmasters? They teach you how to structure speeches and presenting skills. I said, I've heard of it. He said, is a chapter 2 towns away. That's the most successful one in your state as far as awards and reputation. He said, I think you should go. And so I did both. So all of a sudden, when somebody asked me the question, have you ever thought of this? Instantly sparked up because I'd wanted to for so long, but didn't know how to pursue it. And there was an opportunity. And as far as the visualization, he suggested I watch The Secret, which had just come out at that time in the early 2000s. It was all about law of attraction, a great introduction to the basics. Didn't agree with everything they said, but one little segment, about 3 minutes long, a gentleman named John Assaraf was talking about his vision boards and how he set goals and he figured out pictures to represent them. And it increased the odds that he would succeed and reach his goals because it would implant the seed and he would be very connected with it. And I thought that was so fascinating that I started to do that in my life and then teach it. And 17 years later, here we are.
I mean, that's amazing. So you may have said, but what was the time difference between the driving range and the bucket of golf balls to that conversation, to that life change? How long are we talking in that period?
From the thunderstorm to talking with my coach,
Yeah.
about 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
Yep.
No, that's really, really interesting. So did you realize you're at that point? So you kind of, you said it so openly, and again with a touch of humor in it. You said, you were able to go, you were smiling through the point. But when was that moment of realizing that you were at your worst, and how easy was it just 2 or 3 days later to get that kind of positive spin, or kind of something you could have gone on to do? How did that work in your head?
It sounded like something really exciting that I'd always wanted to maybe do because I was a person who kind of lived in the shadows. I was in the radio industry for 10 years, but I was a morning show producer.
Okay.
So I wasn't necessarily a DJ. I wasn't on air, very little, except for the very end of my career. But I was always that person who didn't believe he was good enough to be in the spotlight. My voice wasn't good enough. My confidence was almost non-existent in myself. I was good behind the scenes, but I never wanted to be out in the spotlight because I would literally just shake.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like the attention. I always wished I could. Since I was a little kid, I'd wanted to be a stand-up comedian because I was fascinated by them. I wanted to be a teacher of people, but not in a classroom setting. And that kind of included being a speaker, but I didn't dare get out there and do it. And then when somebody who had already earned my trust in the short time we'd worked together said, I think you'd be really good at this, and I think you would love it. When he showed me the way to pursue it, it flipped a switch of possibility. Now, it didn't mean that all of a sudden I was on top of the world or that I had any more confidence in myself than I had a couple of days prior. I was still in the ashes as far as life goes. And of course, some people go, oh, you found your calling. It's like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And I go, yeah, back up there, bub. My phoenix rides a pogo stick. I fly up, I fall back in, I burn my tail feathers off. I fly up again, and you just bounce higher every time. So it wasn't like this majestic leap out of the ashes. It was, well, okay, I'll try this. And I just happened to fall in love with it. And the little tiniest victories would happen. I do stand-up comedy. Something I created made someone laugh. I do speaking for an audience of 2 people who bothered to show up. One of them reaches out a week later and said, hey, when you shared this lesson, I went and did that and something good happened. So it was those little tiny victories, the first little bricks in the foundation that got me going. It was not overnight. Believe me, it was not overnight. I've been speaking 17 years. I did stand up for 7 and then just decided to focus on the speaking. but it's still a process of growing. And every once in a while I say or do something that puts me back in the ashes, and I learn a new lesson, and I bounce out again.
That's a really kind of positive way of looking at it. And something you said, obviously, you've done it for 17 years. How different is the delivery? How different is Steve from 17 years ago to the delivery he does now? You said there's multiple times in and out of the ashes. You've just admitted to that.
Yeah.
How do they differ, or do they not differ?
They are very different. And it goes back to one of my favorite cartoons of all time is The Far Side. Not sure if you're familiar with The Far Side.
I'm not.
There was one with a caption that said "Same planet, different worlds," and that's pretty much how it describes me. I mean, I still look like the guy who started out, a little more gray, but style wise, confidence wise, material wise, quality wise, still planet Earth, totally different world. And one thing I used to do was look back on my earliest stuff and just bash myself for it. Oh, that was terrible. That was this, blah, blah, blah. I've kind of adopted a different way to look at it now. I don't delete all these things. I don't throw them out. I don't say they're worthless. I just look at them and I say, oh my gosh, that's adorable. And I just laugh.
Mm.
And I say, because I had the guts to hit the record button that day.
Mm.
I have it to look back on now to gauge my progress and say, I remember when I first told that story, it wasn't anything like it is now, but it had legs. And so I took those early seeds, those early bricks, and built something really cool out of it. But I never look back and look down upon them. I'm thankful for them. And that's been a big help in helping me to grow and still be growing. I still find in my old recording studio computer hard drive some really early stuff, and I just look. And the best thing I can say is, oh my gosh, that's adorable. Look at me. Look at that baby motivational speaker. Rah, 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 but it got me where I am now. So I'm grateful for all of it. Even the stuff that makes me cringe, I'm grateful for.
I think that's really interesting, because I've read something recently, or heard something recently from, again, Simon Sinek, someone we're both very, very fond of as his message. And he said he still gets people coming up and not speaking about start with why. And he's like, guys, I did that like 11 years ago. And and he's like, well, I'm talking about the infinite game and things like that now. But that almost sounds to me like it was his start. And I suppose it's something you've got to be proud of, but you've got to be able to move on. Is that fair as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because some of the earliest stories I told when I first started speaking, if somebody hasn't seen me in a decade or more, they'll actually quote the story. Hey, Steve, are you still telling this? Oh, I remember when you told this. And I'm thinking, 1, 2, 3. Oh my gosh, that was a long time ago. It's very different now and it's much better, but it meant something to that person. So I never say, oh, that's nothing you should see now. I just try to be gracious and grateful. I'm grateful every day for so many things, but when I hear from someone who remembers something from way back and will share how it impacted them, I'm never ashamed or embarrassed about those old stories. I always just try to say, I'm so honored that meant something to you because it was really important to me at the time.
Mm. No, and
So I
again,
try to honor them. Yeah.
great answer. Honestly, great answer. I want to take you back then. Years ago, you said when you were a kid, you'd have loved to be the stand-up comedian. What was Steve Gamlin like as a child, and how did he become the motivational firewood guy? So where does motivational firewood guy come from as well? But first of all, talk to me about childhood Steve.
Childhood Steve had a lot of friends. Was very active. I played basketball in the driveway with my dad and my sister. Played baseball for a couple of years in Little League. Was very active and was very plugged in. Did very well in school. Had some really good teachers, and was very popular. I mean, I don't say that in a way to pat my back, but I had a lot of friends and I had a really good reputation in school. And then in junior high, which over here is 7th and 8th grade, all my friends, 99% of them went to one school and I went to a different one. So I knew 2 people out of everybody in that school. And my grades were still good, but 7th grade spelling bee, I got embarrassed because I misspelled a word because Sister Helen kind of mispronounced it a bit. And I misspelled it and I got laughed at. And that was the day I stopped raising my hand in class, because I equated being up in front, being in the spotlight, with potentially getting embarrassed and laughed at and ridiculed and mocked. And my grades from there all the way through the rest of junior high, all the way through high school, all the way through 4 years of college, they progressively went downward because I withdrew. I was not confident anymore. Didn't have a ton of friends, was not assertive, didn't have the highest self-esteem. And I eventually, at age 22, graduated college by 62 one-thousandths of a point. So my dad's favorite joke from my stand-up days was, Steve graduated summa cum this close. So right around, childhood Steve, around the age of 13, lost all his confidence, and it just trailed off. I used to describe it as a plane getting shot at age 13, and it trailed smoke till I was 22 before it finally crashed into nothing. So, the first half of my childhood teen years, very confident. The second half, not at all.
And it's amazing that one moment that you can pinpoint. And again, it happens to all of us. We get this one moment that just, changes everything. And, it's very sad to hear, it's a very sad story in effect. And you deliver it so well because you deliver it with humor. And it's lovely to hear you do that. It's obviously because you've learned from it and grown from it. So let me take you to the Motivational Firewood Guy. So talk to me about that. That's got such an inspiring name, because it just appears. It's brilliant. So talk to me about it.
Sure. When I first started becoming a speaker, I joined the National Speakers Association over here in the US, and they had a chapter that met monthly near Boston, which is kind of northeast US where I live. And I went down there and I had the blue name badge. I always called it the blue name badge of shame, because it meant it was your first meeting and you were brand new. So a gentleman named Don was there, and he saw my blue badge, and he came over and shook my hand. He goes, "Oh, hey, Steve, very nice to meet you. My name is Don. What kind of speaker are you?" I said, "I'm a motivational speaker." He said, "Okay, there's a lot of those. Great. Why are you a motivational speaker?" "I want to help people." He says, "Well, you're not helping to differentiate yourself here. We all want that. What sets you apart?" And I kept saying these garbage fluff answers, and he was so gracious and so patient, and he just kept asking. And I finally just said, "Look, if people are coming to see me, they have a spark of something in their heart. They may not know how to go after it." I go, "But they got a spark of hope and a spark of an idea. If I can share a story, a lesson, something I've gone through, a bit of learning that they embrace and say, well, okay, if I do that and do this action, maybe I can get a better result." And I said, "Bottom line, I'm just like a guy who shares motivational firewood." And Don looked at me and he says, "Do you know anything about trademarks or licensing?" I said, "Not a clue." He goes, "Look it up." He goes, "It's an interesting concept. It's different. And I love the way you just lit up when you described it."
Yeah.
He said, "Pursue that." And I did. I dropped about $1,200 on getting the trademark for that. And I've been the Motivational Firewood Guy ever since.
That's brilliant. And again, just that moment, everything in your life that you've discussed at this point just has those moments of just something that just change. And, I've said many a times on the podcast that it's called Inside the Orange, because when I was explaining to someone how to understand the inside of something from when you just see it from the outside, it's like trying to understand the inside of an orange. And it's the moment you first say that you go, and it's something you've probably said a million times in your life, it's just a moment. And yeah, as I say, it's so nice to hear another moment that you had.
Oh, yeah.
Just the same.
My life is made up of so many moments, and most of them are from conversations with people. When something comes out, we both go, "Whoa."
Yeah.
And then it's a fight of who can grab the pen first and who owns it. I triggered that one. That's mine right there. Yeah. And I've done that with people before. They go, "Okay, I'm totally stealing that story." I'm like, "Well, let's share it." And so we can each say we were with the other one when it happened. And I love collaboration. It's the juice of everything. And it's just, it's a moment, and I love it.
That's brilliant. So one thing, again, I'm going to take you back for many years, I believe. You said about your grandfather, and he said a quote of leaving a situation. Sorry, I have written it down. Leaving at least one situation per day better than you found it. So, two questions here. How inspirational was your grandfather, and how do you still live that even in a time of pandemic where we are in a very difficult time? So, tell me about your granddad, your grandfather, and yeah, how do you still live that way?
Yeah, I was very blessed to have two grandfathers who were very, very different in their careers and just in their styles. But this particular was my mom's father on the French side. So he was my Pepe.
Okay.
And Pep was a simple carpenter, Finnish carpenter, cabinet maker his entire life. And he was such a simple, loving, sweet, kind man. He never actually said the words out loud, but it's the biggest lesson he ever gave me. If he was going past your house, drove past your house, you lived in the same neighborhood, and he happened to look over and see a picket was broken on your fence, he would go home, get his little stubby carpenter pencil, put it on his ear, get his tape measure, go to your house, even if you weren't home, measure it, go home, make a picket, come over, fix your fence, and leave. And you would never know that Al Dion had been there. And that's how he lived his life. A
Wow.
very simple, giving, loving man who didn't do things for the credit. He just did it because he saw a need and he filled it. And he just tried to leave a situation better than he found it. And that was the lesson that I got from observing him. Never said the words, but I've always taken that. So wherever I am, I look for a way to improve a situation. And it comes right down to, even in the pandemic, to get to the second part of your question,
Hmm.
if I go to the grocery store, I looked for abandoned shopping carriages because on a windy day, one of them could move and dent a car and ruin someone's day. So instead of just saying, well, why do people leave carriages out here and complaining and being negative about it, I've just created a game that I call Shopping Cart Rodeo. And I'll park far from the store or near where I see one abandoned, and I'll grab it and I'll either put it in the little corral for where it's safe, or I'll bring it all the way back to the store. And if I don't need it, if I see somebody else walking in, I'll say, excuse me, I just rescued this carriage from out in the parking lot. I've warmed up the hand grip and the wheels hardly wobble. You'll love it. Do you need a carriage? They're laughing. I'm laughing. The only time it's been refused was a gentleman who laughed and said, buddy, he goes, that's classic, but I only need a little red basket today. And I saw him 3 aisles later and he turned around and saw me and he started laughing and smiling again. I'm like, I don't know where his day was when he was in the parking lot, but it's better and mine's better. And every time I do a little act of kindness or just see an opportunity to do something simple and silly, even the weirder, the better, I'm living up to the lesson from my grandfather. So that's what I try to do every time, especially if you can combine kindness and laughter. Home run right there. Absolute gold, because I always get home a different person than when I left.
Mm.
And if I'm having a rough day or a challenging day or frustrated, I actually leave the house and just to go do an act of kindness and come back. Just go do something simple, get in a better headspace and heart space. I always come back better.
It is amazing what you can do. And again, when you are in a place where you can do that for people, it's amazing how it can, like you said, it just changes your day. I mean, just the small little things that you do. And again, I'm not talking about things that I've done, but I can think of examples what I've done in my mind's eye of how I do and how I feel better afterwards. And it is so important. It really is, as I say, and it's so nice to hear that's come from a story again from your childhood. It's amazing. It just kind of shows how it can make it right. I want to talk about people. So you aim to help change people's lives, right? You know, with the visualization, things like that. Do you ever have times where people come to you and they think, "You good luck, mate. I'm a lost cause. You know, you haven't got a chance." How do you deal with that situation? And can you fix everyone? Is that's an I know it's a very general question, but can you fix everyone?
Can I fix everyone? No. And I always try to say right up front, I don't change people's lives and I don't fix people's lives.
Mm.
I have conversations with them to help encourage them to understand that there are ways that maybe they can improve their lives if they're willing to do the work and if they really want to. I've had people that have shown up and just said, look, I'm a lost cause. I mean, literally, I've heard those words.
Mm.
This is the worst my life has ever been, and I'm a lost cause, and I don't know why I'm even bothering to talk to you. And I tell them all the same thing. I go, so let's have a conversation. And I just start asking them questions. Was there a time in your life when you were maybe happier or more hopeful than you are right now? Who were you spending your time around on days like that? What did you do first thing in the morning on at times like that? And my coaching style, I call it, is like playing volleyball. You come up to me, you ask a question, you pop it over the net, and I go, dunk, and I hit it back with an answer or another question.
Mm.
And then you come back and I come back. And after a while, if you've ever seen a really good volleyball match where the ball just keeps going over and people are sliding and digging it out and saving it, at the end of an amazing volley, generally somebody will just spike it beautifully. But in my opinion, I don't even care who won. I'm just so happy to have seen two people so engaged
Mm.
in just keeping that thing in the air for so long and doing their best and digging it out and really digging deep. That's how I coach with people. And we have conversations. And at the end, I'll just ask, okay, what's the one step you're going to take from this? And when I record these, sometimes I'll share the recordings with my clients and I'll say, okay, I want you to watch the end of this first
Wow.
and then go back and watch the beginning. Listen to the sound of your voice, listen to the energy you had. And I'm not saying I've changed anyone's life, but just that energy being shared. They listen to the end first, and then they go back to the beginning and they go, ooh, I didn't realize I was that down or whatever. And I love combining our energy to just shine a little light of potential. That's all. I mean, I'm not here to fix anybody. I can't change anyone's life. I make fun of speakers who say that on stage. I go all TV preacher on them and I go, I can change your life. Just, buy my programs. I'm not like that at all. I'm not for everybody. My style is not for everybody, but for the people that I really, really resonate with, I'm a real everyday human being who's gone through the fire and took notes on his way back.
Mm.
That's what I teach from. It's just my experiences.
No, again, that's really important, to be honest. It's nice, and again, a great message. You can't fix everyone, but it is, and you've said I can't change people's lives, but if people are willing to give it a go, to come and speak to you and have that engagement, and again, it can just be one conversation, can't it? So we've kind of touched on it, but so visualization, why is it so important? Why is it so important to you? Why do you think it makes such a difference?
I think it really gives us a laser focus on where we're going to go. Right now it's like a GPS. If we know and we evaluate where we are right now, and we're brutally honest with ourselves, not bashing, but we're just honest that life's not perfect right now. We know where we are. We start to think of how would I like this to be better? And it's not just in the material stuff. It's your career, your finances, your physical health, your emotional well-being, your spirituality, if that's important to you, your integrity, your authenticity, your connection with the world, your relationships, all these major areas of your life. Start to think of what you want them to look like, feel like, sound like, smell like, be like, say a year from now. Some people say, think 20 years from now. You're going to scare the heck out of people. Think a year from now. let's bite size this. If you understand where you are right now in each of these areas, and if you're a numbers person, you do it on a scale of 1 to 10. If you're a writer, creative person, you think and you visualize of what it looks like and feels like right now. So you start to figure where you want to be in each of these areas of your life, say a year from now. And I'll ask people, what does it look like? If you're embarking in a new career, where would you like to work? Are you starting your own business? Great. What's it going to be called? What's your job title going to be? What are the tasks that you want to do every day? Describe your dream job if we're talking career. And start to connect emotionally to what that feels like. What does it look like? What's the sign on your door say? What does your business card say? What do you do all day? And what do you love most about that? And we start to really get a feel. Jack Canfield calls it acting as if. And I'm a huge Jack Canfield fan, absolutely adore him. And he used to have these things called a come as you'll be party, where he'd work with his clients and say, okay, 5 years from now, think of where you want your life to be. Now we're going to have this big festivity, this big celebration. I want you to arrive there and be in full character of who you're going to be 5 years from now. And people immerse themselves and really get imaginative and creative and take it on. And they embody it because in that moment, they're in a safe place, living out their potential, and they get to taste it. And that's what I do with people visualizing, is to really get personal and get inside of where you want to be. And of course, the all important question is why they want it, and to strengthen that why, to emotionally connect to it as best you can. Because otherwise, like 2020 for a lot of people, it was a clump of trees that fell across the path. If you didn't know why you wanted to go to the top of the mountain, you walked back down the mountain to the parking lot and the porta potties, which is not a pleasant place on a hot summer day. But if you knew why you wanted to get to the top of that mountain, you'll climb over, you'll dig under, you'll walk end to end to get around. And you may just have to take a different path. But if you know why you want to get to the top of the mountain, you're going to get there, or you're going to die trying. And so that's what I try to do, is get people to understand where they want to be and just plot out that path. But always remember why and exactly what it's going to look like, feel like, sound like, smell like, be like when they get there.
Goodness, so well put. Thank you for saying like that. And it's made me kind of understand it better than I did 2-3 minutes ago. So that's, and I think that's key when you can talk about it in that confined space and it's real. It's a very future plan, but do you see people's present change once they've started looking at that? Do you see how they are in the present seem like their future self? Is that kind of fair to ask? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, most definitely. I see a rise in the confidence and the belief in themselves, even if they're not quite sure how they're going to do it yet. When we're in a safe place of me having a conversation with them, and I see them starting to believe it a little bit and going, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't see it like that before, but wow, now, and they get excited. And of course, we're in that safe conversation. Then they get back to the real world, and sometimes people try to knock them off their game. But I see them start to take on that identity a bit. It's like they're drawing it, at least in pencil at first, of potential, and drawing it out and taking those first steps. And I never expect anybody to just, like I said earlier, launch out of the ashes like a phoenix. Mine rides a pogo stick. As long as you keep bouncing higher every time, as long as you keep believing in yourself and go right back to the core energy that you felt when we had our conversation, or when you're going through and listening to my program, or coming to hear me live, or see me on a webinar, or whatever. If you can find a speaker or a coach that you resonate with, and they believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself yet, because that's the people I work with. I believe in them 100%. We work really hard together. I want them to start to feel what I feel for them. I want them to see it in their mirror every day. Matter of fact, I encourage people, go to your mirror every morning and find one thing you admire about yourself. And if it's not a confident day, if you're not feeling great about yourself, if you're not willing to praise yourself enough, at least look down and say, well, your socks match. That's good enough for today. And I spoke to a friend earlier today, and he goes, oh, I have a friend who would blow your mind. He intentionally wears socks that don't match. I go, well, then he better like something about his face, because those socks ain't going to do it.
And again, it's
something, feel it, and then start to go for it, just a little at a time.
It's so nice to hear, and it's so refreshing. And again, I don't want to cheapen it or simplify it, but there's a lot of people who have the saying about when you write down a plan, it becomes a goal. Have you heard that before? I don't know if it's something you've heard before, but is that, I'm not cheapening in any way with that. Is that kind of the idea? Once you can see it, it becomes more real.
Yeah, once you commit it, because gosh, if we sit around, it's, and I always call it the sock puppet conversation, like we have in our head, like, put a sock on each hand over the face, you going, hey, we could do this. No, we can't. But we really want this. We failed before. And if it's just in there, it can go really fast, and it can go negative very quickly. But if we write it down, it's the first step to making it real. And a lot of what I do, the steps that I work with people, is pen to paper. We're not talking your phone, a device, tablet, laptop. No, pen to paper. I don't care if you burn them when you're done. Let's get it out. Let's go sit somewhere quiet, leave all electronic devices at home or in the car. Go somewhere where you can actually unplug and just start writing. And I guide people through it with the processes I do. but it's to really just get it out there how you really feel about stuff, because we're so controlled by social media. We're so controlled by mood. We've got Corona going on still. Not sure if you're aware, but during 2020 here in the States, we had a bit of a presidential election going on. That was a little bit of a hot topic.
Must have missed
Perhaps you've
that.
heard of it.
I must have
Yeah,
missed
really.
that.
That's everybody I talk to internationally. They go, "Oh no, believe me, we heard about it." But there's so much of that noise going on in everybody's head every day. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be aware. I'm not riding a unicorn with glitter and rainbows here. But what we have to understand is we are ultimately in charge of where we want to go. Now, we can either paddle our own boat or we can get pushed by the tide. And too many people in the past year, I just see them giving up so much control because they're so caught up in the frenzy and the fury of the energy around them. And a lot of it was negative and very loud over the past year. But if you can just get to your own place and understand where you're at, where you want to go, and start to align yourself with people who've either already done it or people who are on a similar journey. And you just start to combine your energies and all stay focused and kind of rise above where you were. It's like going up a mountain. You can walk up and there's certain people that are going to grumble the whole time. I've got a blister. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. This backpack's heavy. This view better be worth it. And they're complaining the whole way versus the people you're seeing coming back from the top of the mountain. And this happened to me, so I know what happens. A gentleman was coming down and he goes, "Hey there, young man, how you doing today?" I said, "Good, sir." He goes, "You going up to the top on this side to overlook the bay?" Because it was the fall foliage season. I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "All right. When you get up here to the fork, stay to the right-hand side because the left trail is a little muddy, so the right side's safer. And when you get to the top, immediately go to your right." He goes, "Best view today." And he continued walking. See, he'd already been up there and he was coming down and just gave me a tip to make my climb more enjoyable, safe, successful, colorful. So listen to those people. For the people who are working hard to climb up and not just complaining the whole way, because all they want to do is get back to their car and go home. So it's very important who you align your energies with. And the people who've already been to the top or maybe are just a little higher than you, every once in a while, they'll just take a break, sit on a rock in the sun and eat a sandwich and wait for you to catch up and you can walk together. And that's what I try to do with people is just walk with them for wherever they want to go. Whether I'm headed up or I've already been there and heading back down, I'll turn right around with the right people and go back up again because it's a blast.
That's just, again, I'd just sit here and I could listen to you for hours.
Well,
And
thank you.
no, honestly. And again, just I'm sat here and again, this season now is it being video, so this will go out and I think people are going to be watching this and just watching my gaping mouth like wide open while I'm just sitting, and they're probably thinking, "Rich, you got a podcast to do," but the best thing about a great speaker is when you just want to listen. And I mean, it's amazing. And, thank you for that. We're not quite finished yet. I wanted to talk to you about what your future holds. So is it a visualization board already done? Can you tell us about what's on yours going forward?
There is, yeah, for this year. This was a very important one. And a big part of it is the gratitude that I have for the year that was 2020, because it wasn't all perfect, but it caused me to bounce my business off the wall a different way. And we actually have a way that we're approaching the business and what we're able to do with people, especially within companies and company teams now. Even if they're working from home, we created a platform and a method to still be able to work with people that don't involve me hopping in a plane, flying somewhere and doing a one-day event. Now, that would not have happened without Corona. So this year, my goal is to work with a team inside at least 3 Fortune 100 companies anywhere in the world. Just 3 to just get in and then potentially license the audio training program that I created. On my scale at the end of this year, 220 pounds. That's going to be the physical health because there is some Corona weight going on here. It's all off camera. Most of it's off camera. To continue 3 or 4 nights a week to make dinner with my wife, Tina. I've got a picture of our kitchen. We also do a lot of work. We have on the kindness side, we had what started off as a very simple giving acts of kindness mission about 8 years ago. And actually, because of all the people we've met over the years, it now is federally filed a 501c3 charitable organization. So we formalized it. So we have some big goals for kindness this year to be able to help out with some people. And just right down the line, staying connected with people, just being really immersed in the best version of each part of my life to make sure that my integrity is 100%. Always, to not cheat anybody, not skirt around any issues, not live in any gray areas. My other grandfather, that was the lesson I got from him when I was about 15, 16 years old. He said, young man, your integrity is something you can compromise once. You'll never have 100% again. So don't. He says the short-term gain might seem worth it. It never is. So I make sure everything I do, I stay above board as best I can and with the right intentions every day to be ethical, moral, and have full integrity in everything I do, and to be 100% authentic at all times. That's so important to me, and be vulnerable with the world as well.
No, that's, again, lovely answers. I've got one question I want to finish on, but before I do that, for the benefit of my listeners, how can people find you? Where can they find your work, Steve? Just give us everything you want.
Yep. Nice and easy. It's all actually in one place, motivationalfirewood.com. And it's my vision board work is there. There's a free masterclass that explains for somebody going, what the heck is this visualization stuff and how does it work? What was Steve talking about? That's there as well. Weekly group coaching, my books, everything is at that one place, motivationalfirewood.com.
Fantastic. And the last question I want to ask you, and it's a hypothetical one, but I want to see your take on it. So you talked about earlier in the conversation, and I love the honesty you gave about the guy hitting the golf balls. And again, I've spoken about it a couple of times in the interview, but I want you to kind of imagine him, and imagine you're watching him hitting these balls into and you can see what he's thinking. The difference is you now are in the car park. What do you do? How do you approach it? Is that a fair question? Sorry, I know that's putting yourself on yourself.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fair question, because I would just look and go, what the heck is that fool doing out there? What is he doing? But it's funny that you say I'm out there. I would probably, because this was at the very far end of the property away from the usual parking lot, I would probably take my car and I would go park right behind where he's at, and I would just watch him. Because part of me would say, this guy's fearless. I mean, I know what's going on in that person's head because that was me.
Yeah.
Saying, well, this guy's foolish. But another part of me would look at this guy and say, this guy's fearless. He's in a thunderstorm under power lines, hitting golf balls. Is it foolish and silly, dangerous? Yeah, probably. But he doesn't care. If I didn't know what was going on in the mind of that person, which I do because it was me, I would actually admire that person for being the only one who stayed out in the storm. Regardless of what storm might have been going on for him, I actually would admire that person and think that person had guts.
What would you say to him? Or would you?
If I saw him walking away with the empty buckets of golf balls, if the storm was still going on, I would probably offer to buy another bucket and be like, hey man, if you want to stay out here, I'll buy you some more golf balls because I love what you're doing. And that's, I've never actually given that answer before. No one's ever asked me that. And I'm actually getting emotional thinking about it, because I would, I'd buy him some more golf balls and just let him get it out of whatever he was dealing with.
Bless you, Steve. I appreciate you asking that question. It isn't one that I sent you in the first place. And I always say to my guests, I'm not going to sideswipe you, but I'm just how you've come across. I think it was a question that's really good to finish on, to kind of just understand how far, where you are. And it's amazing. And I appreciate and I admire the humility of it making you emotional. So, thank you for letting me ask it and not going, we didn't agree on this.
I tell people all the time, I said, look, there's nothing off grounds or off the table. Fire away. And now I'm going to talk about this and say, hey, I was on Richard Show and he asked me this question. I never thought of it this way. I actually admire that guy. I bashed him for so many years, and now, hey, you know what? He had guts. A little misguided in a thunderstorm with another golf club, but Yeah, I would have bought him another bucket of golf balls. So thank you. You just gave me a huge gift. Thank you.
No worry. Again, you've given me the gift of just coming on my show and talking about this, and again, taking the chance on me. And, I appreciate that. And again, what I do like with any of my guests, and I'll be honest with you, it's not a one-time thing. So if there's something we want to talk about in the future, let's come back and talk about it. If there's a vision out there that you want to talk about, then Steve, you're welcome back anytime to come and talk about this. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for just telling your story. As I say, I've sat there at parts of this interview absolutely dumbfounded and not able to speak, which when you're a podcaster is pretty dangerous, but it just shows how great a guest you are. So Steve, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. And that is a huge, huge honor. And I don't take that lightly. Thank you very much. You just made my day with those words. And when my mom hears this, you're going to get the MMC rating, which is made mama cry.
Oh, bless you. So on next week's show, I'll be interviewing Mark Holson, who's going to tell his leadership story to us. I'm looking forward to that, so we'll see you next week. Goodbye and take care. Thanks for listening to this episode. If this podcast is something you enjoy, then please subscribe to the podcasts and make sure you like and share so more people can hear our message. Remember, if you have any questions for me or my guests, you can get in touch via our website, insidetheorange.co.uk, on Twitter @OrangeWatts, on Instagram @InsideTheOrange, or on Facebook on the Inside the Orange podcast. And finally, there's the email of insidethisorange@gmail.com. All these links will be available in the description. Thanks for listening, goodbye and take care.